Hey nerds, and welcome to ranking all commanders from Streets of New Capenna and the corresponding commander products. I've received a lot of feedback lately that you guys wanted to have me rank the commander deck exclusive commanders as well, so I'll be doing that. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe for more. Font of Hope, let's begin. A 2/2 angel for 1 and a white with flying and vigilance. Each other angel you control enters the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on it for each angel you already control, and it taps for 1 white mana that you can only spend on angels. It taps for mana in white, it buffs up all your angels, it comes down early, it solves a lot of the issues for angel tribal, especially in mono white. Gaida definitely deserves an A tier ranking. She's probably just going to be in a tribal build. A lot of the time she might be in the 99, but she is fantastic. Next up we have Errant Street Artist, a 0/3 human rogue for single blue with flash, defender, and haste. You may spend 1 in blue and tap her to copy a target spell you control that wasn't cast, and you choose new targets for the copy. This is really good for things like redirect or spell copying effects. She synergizes really well with the adventure mechanic. I see her more in the 99 of other builds and not as the lead singer of any decks in particular. If she had, say, a red and blue color identity, she would probably do better. I'm going to put her in B tier for now. Next up we have Jaxus the Troublemaker, a 2/3 human warrior for 3 and a red. She has a blitz cost for 1 and a red, meaning that you can cast her for 1 and a red. She gains haste, and when she dies you draw a card and you sacrifice her at the beginning of the next end step. So she does always have an additional way to cast her, which is really cool. You may pay a red and tap her to discard a card and create a token copy of another creature you control. It gains haste and the blitz when this creature dies, draw a card effect, and you sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. So it does a Kiki Jiki kind of deal that requires you to discard a card. This one is probably going to get up to a lot of shenanigans, and I do appreciate that. I'm not sure if it has the ability to go infinite in mono red, but I'm going to put Jaxus down into B tier. She's probably a fantastic include in other builds, but I don't know if building her as a solo commander would be a good idea. Next up we have Urbrask, Heretic Praetor, a 4/4 with haste for 3 red. At the beginning of your upkeep, you exile the top card of your library and you can play it this turn. At the beginning of your opponent's upkeep, the next time they would draw a card, they instead exile the top card of their library and they may play it this turn. This basically turns off their draw and limits what spells they cast greatly. For instance, they would not be able to cast counter spells that are drawn with this effect because they can't play it that turn. Urbrask is good. I can see him in a value-oriented build. He's probably not going to be a commander though. I'm going to put him down in C tier. It's a really cool and powerful card, but as the lead singer of a deck, you can do a lot better. Next up we have Cormela, Glamour Thief for 1 blue, black, red. You get a 2/4 vampire rogue with haste. You may pay 1 and tap her to add blue, black, and red to your mana pool, and you can only spend that on instant and sorcery spells. And when she dies, you may return an instant or sorcery card from your graveyard to your hand. This is a very good commander. She ramps you pretty heavily in a Grixis spell-oriented deck. As the lead singer by herself, underwhelming, but I do see her in a spell slinger list with probably Kess. I'm going to put her down into the C tier as well, where she does have potential, but she doesn't do enough to justify a higher ranking. Next up we have Evelyn, the Covetous, a 2/5 vampire rogue for 2 black and a hybrid Jetmeer and Rakdos pip. She has flash, and whenever Evelyn or another vampire enters the battlefield, exile the top card of each player's library with a collection counter on it. Once each turn, you may play a card from exile with one of the collection counters on it if it was exiled with this ability, and you may spend mana as those any color to cast it. This is one of those commanders that you play everyone else's deck. You're in Grixis, so you have a lot of access to stealing effects as well. This is one of those commanders where the power level is always determined by the power level of the table, which is really fun, and she does get some minor vampire synergies as well, as her ability does trigger whenever you play another vampire. I'm putting Evelyn into A tier. I can see a lot of fun play patterns with this one. Next up we have Falco Spara, Pact Weaver for 1 green, white, blue. You get a 3/3 flying trampling bird demon. Falco enters the battlefield with a shield counter on it, and you may look at the top card of your library at any time. You can cast spells from the top of your library by removing a counter from a creature you control in addition to paying its other costs. Future sight effects are always amazing. This is a future sight effect on a commander. The shield counter will help keep it around. It's in good colors to allow you to storm out. Falco is going to be very, very powerful, and I'm going to put him into the S tier ranking. I know at least one person is going to think I'm crazy for this one, but Falco is going to be a great commander. Next up, we have Jetmist, Nexus of Revels for 1 red, green, white. You get a 5/4 cat demon with creatures you control. Have +1/+0 and vigilance if you have 3 or more creatures. If you have 6 or more creatures, they get an additional +1/+0 and trample. And if you have 9 or more creatures, you get an additional +1/+0 and double strike. With 9 creatures out, your creatures get +3/+0, vigilance, trample, and double strike. This is obviously amazing for a token build. Great colors for token strategy as well. I can see this going in Rin and Sarian doing some. Jetmeer is going into A tier by himself. He is a fantastic commander for tokens, great colors as well. Nothing bad to say about this one. Coming in next, we have Ginny Faye, Jetmeer's second, a 3/3 elf druid for a hybrid Gruul, a hybrid Selesnya, and a green. If you would create 1 or more tokens, you may instead make a 2/2 green cat creature token and a 3/1 dog creature token. Both are green. If you would create 1 or more tokens, you may instead create a 2/2 green cat creature token with haste and a 3/1 dog with vigilance. This is absolutely fantastic in any sort of token build. This not only doubles the tokens you produce. Instead of 1/1 soldiers, you get cats and dog. Definitely going into A tier as well. Fantastic commander. Next up, we have Lygrella the Magpie, a 2/3 human soldier for green, white, blue. When Lygrella enters the battlefield, exile any number of target creatures controlled by different players until Lygrella leaves the battlefield. When an exiled card enters the battlefield under your control this way, put 2 +1/+1 counters on it. This is a confusing card. Essentially, it lets you banish your priest 1 creature for each player until Lygrella leaves the battlefield. Going to be played mostly in a blink style build where you just try and blink effects like Cloud Blazer or Mole Drifter. There are better commanders that are suited for a blink style build, notably Rune. I do like that it does pump the creature that it gets exiled. I'm going to put Lygrella into the C tier listing. It's confusing and not very powerful, and other commanders do what it's trying to do a whole lot better. Next up, we have Lord Xander the Collector for 4 blue, black, red. You get a 6/6 vampire demon noble with whenever Lord Xander enters the battlefield, target opponent discards half the cards in their hand, rounded down. When he attacks, target player mills half their library, rounded down. And when he dies, target opponent sacrifices half the non-land permanents they control, rounded down. Fun fact, the professor's trying to get this one banned, so that might say quite a bit for its power level. It does 3 absolutely amazing things on ETB, attack, and death. It can completely neuter opponents, and you can target different people with each of the abilities. Helm of the Host with this thing is going to be a ludicrous play. I'm going to put this into S tier. I think this is going to be one of the best commanders and cards in general to come out of this set, and hopefully Prof can get it banned. That would be cool. Next up, we have Mr. Offeo the Boulder, a 2/4 Rhino Warrior for 1 black, red, green. Whenever you attack, double target creature's power until end of turn. This is a very similar to Xenagos God of Revels, but it's in Jund colors. I'm going to put this one into a D tier listing. It doesn't really do a whole lot. It has no inherent protection. It might do well in the 99 of another build, but by itself, it has a rather unimpressive effect. Coming up next, we have Agnes, Dragon's Lash, a 3/3 Viashino Warrior with haste for 1 and a hybrid Rakdos, a hybrid Gruul, and a red. Whenever creature you control with haste attacks, create a tapped treasure token. So you can't use the treasure right away, which is unfortunate, but if you're going wide, you're going to create a lot of treasure with this guy. I think he's really cool. I'm going to put him into A tier listing. This is a straightforward beat 'em up style commander in Jund colors, which makes it good because you can get a lot of different haste effects. Agnes is pretty solid. Next up, we have Quasiaugur of Agnes, a 3/4 Cellophid Advisor for 1 blue, black, white. With the ability, whenever you draw a card, target opponent loses a life and you gain a life. This triggers for every card drawn, so we're looking to build a deck around maximize our card draw. We're looking to win the game with things like Peer into the Abyss to just one-shot opponents. We can make use of the life gain as well, and this looks like a great control commander. I'm actually going to put this one into A tier. I think it's simple. powerful and opens up a lot of different avenues as to how you actually want to win with it. This one might be one of the more contentious picks. Let me know about what you think of Quasiaugur in the comments. I am genuinely curious as to whether or not you think this is good or bad. Next up, we have Raphine, Scheming Seer. For white, blue, and black, we get a Sphinx Demon that's a 1/4 with flying and ward 1. Whenever you attack, target attacking creature connives X, where X is the number of attacking creatures. This is going to be another fantastic control commander, this one focusing more around cycling and discarding effect, as well as a reanimation sub-theme. Things like Archfiend of Ifnir are going to be amazing in the deck. Raphine is definitely going to be a great commander as it lets you cycle through your deck. You can also build it as a reanimation style commander, as you can discard big fatties and then draw into reanimation effects. Blue, white, and black have great targets. I do really like this commander, and I think it's going to have the most variety of decks out of all commanders in the main set. Raphine is going to be going into A tier. While I think it's really good, I don't think relying on an attack trigger to cycle through your deck is as reliable as it could be, so Raphine definitely has a lot of potential. Next up, we have Rigo, Streetwise Mentor, a 2/2 cat citizen for a white, a hybrid Selesnya, and a hybrid Azorius. And when it enters the battlefield, you get a shield counter on it. And when you attack a player or planeswalker with one or more creatures with power 1 or less, you draw a card. This isn't great. This is going into C tier. It's a Bant commander that does allow you to draw. Unfortunately, you can only draw upwards of 3 cards per turn. I don't think that a 2/2 with a shield counter on it is going to last too long. If this is going to be your main source of card draw to get through your deck, I don't think it's going to be great. Rigo is disappointing. Next up, we have Rocco, Cabaretti Caterer, a 3/1 Elf Druid for red, green, white, and X. When Rocco enters the battlefield, if you cast it, you may search your library for a creature card with mana value of X and put it onto the battlefield, and then shuffle. This is Court of Calling in the command zone. It does get really expensive when you have to recast it from the command zone over and over again, but this allows you to have a toolbox style of deck and is actually quite powerful. I'm putting Rocco into A tier. I think you can build this to combo out and just win the game. A tutor to the battlefield in the command zone is just absurdly powerful. Next up, we have Toulouse, Clever Conductor, a 3/1 human rogue for a blue, hybrid Azorius, and hybrid Jetmeer. When it enters the battlefield, it connives, so you draw a card, discard a card. If it was an online card discarded, you get a +1/+1 counter. Whenever you discard one or more cards, that discarded card gets exiled. And when Toulouse dies, you put all the exiled cards into your hand. This is going into my B tier as a cycling commander. You can cycle quite a few cards, get them back in your hand, and get a lot of Astral Slide and Astral Drift triggers. This is probably one of the best replacements for Zur as a cycling commander. That being said, it's very vulnerable as it can come down as big as a 4/2 and has no inherent protection. I think Toulouse is a good commander, but not great. Lastly, we have Zeatora, the Incinerator, a 6/6 Demon Dragon for 3 black, red, green. Of course, it has flying, as well as at the beginning of your end step, you can sacrifice another creature. When you do, Zeatora deals damage equal to that creature's power to any target, and you create 3 treasure tokens. This, of course, is not replacing Core Vault. It does earn itself an A tier ranking. It burns face, it creates mana, it's a big beat stick by itself. Zeatora is absolutely fantastic, and is probably going to be run in your core vaults and your prosh lists. Now we're going to move on to commanders from the commander sets. We're going to start with Angelo, the Painter, a 1/3 vampire assassin with Death Touch for blue, black, red. With the first instant or sorcery you cast each turn has casualty 2, so you can copy it by sacrificing a creature with 2 or more power. You can easily get tokens with 2 or more power with things like Jadar, Nephalia Scourge, and easily be able to copy whatever you want. This thing is going to be a great commander. And Angelo is going to be getting an A tier ranking. Most of the time I see this going into the 99 of, say, Kess, but by himself he is still very powerful commander with a token sub-theme. Next up, we have Hensy Tool Box, a 3/3 Devil Rogue for black, red, green. Each creature spell you cast with mana value 4 or greater has Blitz, and the Blitz cost is equal to the mana cost. Additionally, Blitz cost you pay costs 1 less for each time you've cast your commander from the command zone this game. Baseline, this discounts your creatures by 1 and lets them blitz out. If you're building a deck like this, you're probably going for effects that already do that, or creatures that want to be sacrificed, things like ball lightning, skelemental, things like that, to just rush at opponents. The fact that you can continue to discount your stuff more by having Hensy cast multiple times from the command zone is just a plus. This is going to be a good sacrifice commander. Unfortunately, I just think it's too slow to start discounting stuff enough to make it matter. I'm going to be putting this in B tier. I do think it's good, but I don't think it does what it wants to do fast enough to make it relevant. Next up, we have Camise Obscura Oculus, a 2/4 Celephid Rogue for 1 blue, black, white, with the ability that whenever you attack, target attacking creature can't be blocked this turn. It connives, and then you choose another attacking creature with lesser power. That creature gains double strike. This wants you to be attacking with at least 2 creatures each turn. Making big things unblockable can win games. It always has that going for it. It does synergize really well with ninjas, which is super cool as it adds white into the color combination for ninjas. Camise is going into my B tier listing. While it does a cool thing, it's easily shut down and doesn't give you enough direction for your commander deck other than attack. Coming in next is Kanto, Mayhem Diva, a 3/3 Catbird Druid for 1 red, green, and white. She enters the battlefield with a 1/1 green and white citizen creature token. At the beginning of combat on each player's turn, you may tap 2 untapped creatures you control. When you do, target creature that player controls gets +2/+2 and trample until end of turn and is goaded. This is going to be one of my favorite politics commanders. Goad is a fantastic ability in the commander format. You can give your opponents bigger trampling things, but they can't attack you. When she comes down, she can immediately use the effect. She does promote a go wide strategy, of course, because you do want a bunch of things that you can tap down, but Kanto is going to be goading a lot of creatures and keeping you safe while you build up an army. Fantastic commander, A tier, no question. Stomping in next is Pierre the Pulverizer, a 3/3 Rhino Soldier for 1 green, white, blue. It enters the battlefield with a shield counter on it. Whenever it attacks, target creature you control gains +X/+X until end of turn, where X is the number of different kinds of counters among permanents you control. This is a rather boring commander. You want to be getting a bunch of different types of counters. It makes one thing big. It's not going to be giving a big enough bonus for it to count. The creature does gain trample, which is nice. I just don't think Pierre does enough by itself to warrant being commander. It would be good in, say, an Atraxa build if you focused on attacking in Atraxa, but beyond that, Pierre deserves a C tier listing. Next up, we have the Beam Town Bullies, a 4/4 Ogre Devil Warrior for 1 black, red, green with Vigilance and Haste. Tap it to have an opponent whose turn it is put a non-legendary creature card from your graveyard onto the battlefield under their control. It gains haste and it's goaded. At the beginning of the next end step, you exile it. I'm putting this in D tier. You have to not only mill yourself to put creatures you want your opponents to attack with into your graveyard, you then have to get this on the battlefield and resolve its effect, and the creature that you reanimate for your opponent is then exiled at the end of turn, so you can't reuse the same creatures over and over. It just requires so much setup for so little payoff. I might be wrong on this one. Let me know what you guys think, but I think this one is just bad. Next up, we have Kroos, Defense Contractor. For 1 green, white, blue, we get a Cat Advisor. That's a 2/4. At the beginning of your upkeep, you put a shield counter on target creature and opponent controls, and whenever you put 1 or more counters on a creature you don't control, tap that creature and goad it. It gains trample until your next turn. This is so much better than Pierre. Not only does it try to put counters on your opponent's stuff, they can be -1/-1 counters or counters that don't do much. It has a completely unique play pattern where you're trying to put stuff on your opponent's creatures. It still has the great gameplay of goading your opponent's creatures, and is one of those commanders that focuses on politics that just makes it so much more fun. I do love Kroos. He's going to be getting an A tier listing Coming next, we have Harness the Subtle Brush, a 4/4 vampire wizard for 2 blue, black, red. Whenever you or permanent you control becomes a target of a spell or an ability an opponent controls, counter that spell unless that player pays 4 life. And whenever you copy a spell, up to 1 target opponent may also copy that spell and choose new targets for the copy. Harness tries to do a politics game where you can play big spells, copy it, and potentially use a third copy that your opponents control to try and get as much benefit as you can. Unfortunately, it doesn't copy things by itself. Giving everything you have ward for 4 life is pretty cool, but by itself, Parnas requires a lot of setup. It's quite expensive at 5 mana and can backfire spectacularly. Parnas is going into my D tier ranking. I just don't like what it does. Next up, we have Fabian Boss is Confident, a 3/6 cat advisor for 3 red, green, white. She gives creature tokens you control haste. It also has Parlay, so at the beginning of combat on your turn, each player reveals top card of the library. For each land card revealed, you get a 1/1 green and white citizen creature token, and then creatures you control get +1/+1 for each non-land card revealed that way. Then each player draws a card. This draws you cards, gives you small armies every single turn. It pumps up all your creature tokens. It is a fantastic card in any Naya token build. I do really like this one. It's going into B tier. It is expensive for what it does, but the parlay is really good, especially if you can get multiple combat steps. You can really break this thing. Next up, we have Tivit, Seller of Secrets, a 6/6 Sphinx Rogue for 3 white, blue, black. It has flying and ward 3. It has Council's Dilemma, meaning whenever it enters a battlefield or deals combat damage to a player, starting with you, each player votes for evidence or bribery. For each evidence vote, you investigate, so you make a clue token. For each bribery vote, you create a treasure token. And when you vote, you can vote an additional time. This is trying to be a politics commander. It does give you a bunch of tokens. Most of the time, you're just getting clue tokens. It's big. It does not have any way to discount itself. It does have ward 3, so it does have a bit of inherent protection. It's not that impressive, but if you're going for a Council's Dilemma and voting style deck, it can do some really powerful things, as you do get to vote an additional time with all effects that require voting, not just its own. It's going into B tier. It's okay. It has a deck that it can definitely run. It does seem kind of oddly placed in these commander products, but it can be built by itself. Next up, we have Bess Soul Nurturer, a 1/1 human citizen for 1 green white. Whenever 1 or more other creatures with base power and toughness 1/1 enter the battlefield under your control, she gets a +1/+1 counter, and whenever she attacks, each other creature you control with base power 1/1 gets +X/+X until end of turn, where X is the number of counters on her. Bess is a decent human or sapperling tribal commander. She doesn't do a whole lot, unfortunately. It does require a lot of build up to get going, which is very typical for token decks. She's easily removed. She's okay, she's just boring. I'm going to give her a C tier listing. There's a million other commanders that are better for this kind of deck. Next up, we have Denry Klin, Editor-in-Chief, a 2/2 cat advisor for 2 blue and white. Denry Klin enters the battlefield with either a +1/+1 counter, a first strike counter, or a vigilance counter. It's your choice. And whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield, if it has any counters on it, put the same kind of counters on that creature. This is an interesting one, as you're trying to get a bunch of different styles of counters on Denry Klin to then give to other creatures. Unfortunately, it doesn't affect tokens, else it would be much better than what it is. You're looking to probably get shield counters, +1/+1 counters, and maybe double strike counters. It is quite difficult to do, so I can't really give it much higher than a C ranking. I can see where the deck is going. I just think that having to set up that many counters onto one creature definitely leaves it vulnerable to removal. Unfortunately, once it's removed, it really shuts you down. Next up, we have Jolene the Plunder Queen, a 2/2 human warrior for 2 red-green. Whenever a player attacks 1 or more of your opponents, that attacking player creates a treasure token. If you would create 1 or more treasure tokens, you instead create that many tokens +1. And you can sacrifice 5 treasures to put 5 +1/+1 counters on Jolene. This does give your opponents treasures whenever they attack your opponents, so it does encourage them to attack them. You do get double the effect of creating the treasure tokens. The sacrificing 5 treasure tokens to give it +1/+1 counters is not something you should ever do, because treasure tokens are much more valuable than that. Jolene's a cool variant on the Gruul attack everyone commanders and can easily slot into a lot of decks. By itself, I don't think it's a good lead singer. I'm giving her a C listing. Next up, we have Oscar, Rubbish Reclaimer, a 3/3 human wizard for 3 blue-black. Oscar costs 1 less for each different mana value among cards in your graveyard, and whenever you discard a non-land card, you may cast it from your graveyard. So, 2 things. This thing can get discounted quite easily, which is really good, and the ability to essentially give anything you discard madness is also really cool. The only thing is, if you're having a deck built around this, a single Rest in Peace or Graveyard Hate card is going to completely shut you out. I can't give Oscar higher than a B. I think it can do cool things, but I don't think getting a bunch of cards with different mana values into your graveyard is going to be an easy thing. It's okay. It does not excite me at all, though. Coming in next is Syrinx, Carrier of the Flame, a 3/3 legendary phoenix for 2 black-red. Has flying and haste, and at the beginning of each end step, if a creature card left your graveyard this turn, target phoenix deals damage to any target equal to its power, and whenever another phoenix you control dies, you may cast Syrinx from your graveyard. This is the Phoenix Commander. It is absolutely fantastic. It synergizes with all of the Phoenix abilities, which revolve around getting your phoenixes back from the graveyard. It deals a bunch of damage when you do so. You can cast it from your graveyard itself. It's what everyone has been wanting for Phoenix Commander. This is going into A tier listing. It may not be powerful, but people have been looking forward to this commander, and it's really solid for the kind of deck it's trying to support. Next up, we have Benny Brax, Zoologist, a 3/2 elf druid for 3 and a white. Has Convoke, and at the beginning of your end step, if you create a creature token this turn, draw a card. It's a mono white commander that focuses on tokens and gives you card draw. It's everything white needs. The fact that it gives card draw just makes it a automatic S rank commander if you're only going for mono white. Otherwise, it's just a B. It does its thing. It's not exciting, but it draws cards. Coming in next, we have Mari, the Killing Quill, a 3/2 vampire assassin for 1 black-black. Whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, you exile it with a hit counter on it. Assassins, mercenaries, and rogues you control have death touch, and whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, you may remove a hit counter from a card they own in exile. If you do, draw a card and make 2 treasure tokens. This is supporting 3 rather underappreciated tribes, but it does so very well, giving death touch, allowing them to hit. It does require you to kill a bunch of your opponent's creatures. However, if you can get Mari out with a single board wipe, you can easily set yourself up to continuously draw cards and make treasures over the course of a game. It being in mono black is rather unfortunate. I would have preferred if this was blue and black. That being said, Mari is going into a C tier ranking. For what she does, she's really good. However, to get her doing what she wants to do, she just requires a lot of setup, which is a theme for a lot of these commanders. I just don't think the payoff of drawing a card and making 2 treasure tokens is enough to justify the setup for Mari. Lastly, we have Vazi, Keen Negotiator, a 3/3 human advisor for 2 black-red-green. She has haste, and you can tap her to have target opponent create X treasure tokens, where X is the number of treasure tokens you created this turn. And whenever an opponent casts a spell or activates an ability, if mana from a treasure was spent to cast it or activate it, you put a +1/+1 counter on target creature and draw a card. I don't like this at all. It gives your opponents a bunch of treasure tokens. It doesn't have any way to give yourself treasure tokens on the card itself, so you have to rely on other cards to even use its tap ability. While treasure tokens have become ubiquitous in the format, the idea of just putting a +1/+1 counter on a creature and drawing a card does not in any way excite me. The payoff of giving your opponent a bunch of treasure tokens is going to be good. Vazi is going into D tier. I don't see any good applications for this card. I would much rather just have any of the other Jund commanders that we've looked at today, even Beamtown Bullies, than this card. It's just bad. Alright nerds, that's it for today. Which commander is your favorite out of the new Streets of Capenna set or the corresponding commander deck? Let me know what you think down in the comments. Remember, like, comment, and subscribe for additional videos. Thanks nerds.